Michael J.
Modern is what's up. Let's talk about some modern decks. Yeah, it's been a while since we talked about modern.
Yeah, and there's some developments, you know.
I mean, yeah, this stuff's popping, right? So, I don't know. Why don't we start it off with next EP's 5-0 list from the Modern League earlier this week. It's a blue-red list, and its creatures are like a Brazen Borrower. Okay, I can get behind that. 4 Snapcaster Mage. All right, if you're an all-spells deck, that makes sense. 4 Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. Huh?
Boom!
This is just
Headshot.
how the creatures look now?
Headshot. I mean, you're kind of, you know, like you're omitting the really compelling Through the Breach half of that combo.
So there are 4 Through the Breach. I'm imagining, like, if I were playing this deck, I would cast a Snapcaster Mage, buy the Through the Breach back, and get him for, like, another, you know, however many.
Get him for 17?
Yeah, however many that is. That's what's coming over.
17. Yes. You know, if nothing else, you can just, you know, splice a Through the Breach with a Through the Breach.
Oh.
You know, get Brazen Borrow in there too. You know, that's 20.
So how would you categorize this? Is this like this is a combo deck? Is it Splinter?
Definitely.
This is a Splinter Twin deck.
This is just Splinter Twin. Yeah.
But you don't kill him. You just get him.
You just hit him with an Emrakul. Yeah, you don't kill him. You get him to 5.
Yeah.
But maybe they took some damage from their fetch lands and shock lands and stuff. And your deck has Snapcaster Mages and Lightning Bolts and Brazen Borrower. So you got some things, you know.
So this is really like a lace it together and finish them off with Lightning Bolt deck, I think, right?
Yeah, lace it together, finish them off, because they're going to start bending over backwards to stay on 16 if they know what's good for them. But even then, it's like, you got a lot of breathing room. You just freaking hit them with an Emrakul.
Yeah, I mean, if that resolves, like, they're so messed up, right? Like, if you cast Through the Breach and they're not a blue deck, right? Like, they're just messed up, right? For sure. What can you do?
It's not great for them. It's not great. I mean, they can sack 6 permanents.
Ugh.
No, like, if they got enough, like, 0-1s and 1-1, like, depending on what their deck is, it's usually pretty horrible for them. But, like, for instance, take Panda Conda's 5-0 list in that same league. So it's an update to the Hardened Scales, you know, that whole package. Hardened Scales, the Ozolith, all that. What's interesting is instead of black for Winding Constrictor or white for other Winding Constrictor, this one actually has red.
This is a weird deck.
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? And this is a deck that's made possible because of Zendikar, because a key card here is Kazul's Fury, which is fling for 1 mana more, but
also a land.
You can play it as a land, right? And that's kind of, you know, that's not too bad, right?
Well, there's like all the fling combos here, right? Like you can get like a Hardened Scales in play, and then when you fling your Arcbound Ravager, it's like profit.
Right, and there's like some crazy stuff, like Scrapyard Recombinator.
Yeah, what's up with that card? I've never seen anyone summon that card.
I mean, what's not up with it? Like, you could just go get Hangerback Walker or Steel Overseer or Walking Ballista. It's pretty good, right?
Or you can sacrifice Hangerback Walker. Huh? You could sacrifice.
Oh, totally. And you could sacrifice this to your other stuff. It's got modular also. It's a little slow, but it combos with a lot of stuff. It's basically just another way to go over the top. And I think that once you're not playing black and not playing white, you got a little bit of space, right? And you need a few more creatures. You can't just play lots of burn spells. You need to have a critical mass of creatures. And so then they're like, well, let's get a little bit of Scrapyard Recombinator action in here.
And we also have to have like a critical mass of nonsense for your like Throne of Geth Hardened Scales combos.
Totally. And that's part of the reason why Kazul's Fury is kind of exciting. Normally, it's real hard to get any interaction in these decks, because you just need you need to play like for instance, this deck's got 13? You got to play a lot. You got to play like at least a dozen pieces of nonsense and at least 20 creatures, preferably more. So it gets a little, and that's not even counting your like Inkmoth Nexuses, but like it gets real tight trying to find room for any interaction. So to be able to get that out of your resource row, that's not too bad, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think of Llanowar Reborn?
So
in this particular deck, you know?
I don't love that it enters the battlefield tapped, right? Like I don't love
downside.
that. But it is the right color to help cast Hardened Scales, but you kind of, you know, you get like the Graftish combo, you know, if Hardened Scales is on board. That's a thing. I really don't love that it enters the battlefield tapped. I gotta say, like that. Like so I feel like this deck wants to tap its mana. Like I feel like you want to play a Hardened Scales super fast and then just like start benefiting from it from turn 2 as soon as you've gotten play. Like you've all these modular creatures, all these +1/+1 counter type stuff.
But that's part of the reason why Craig Crown Pathway is so well suited to this deck. You know, like Grove of the Burden Willows is just amazing anyway.
This deck.
Totally. And you know, like a lot of decks can't really. It's not like you can just play a mountain and be like, oh, that's fine, I just don't have green. This deck actually can. Maybe you play it for red mana because you just really need to use this lightning bolt in your hand. If you just didn't draw the Hardened Scales, okay, I guess you just have no green mana. Who cares?
Do you think...
Or more relevantly, it's Alpine Moon is the one that you just want to make sure you can play early and often when it matters.
So that's the real reason to have red?
That's the real read.
Because, like, yeah. I feel like I would just rather have another color combination than red. I mean, obviously you want green, right? But I guess Grove of the Burn Willows gives you an additional dual land. I guess that's good.
And Craig of the Pathway. Not everybody gets those, you know?
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, like, if you could go green-white or something, you have an additional Hardened Scales type effect.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go red, you got to believe in Alpine Moon. I don't know how big of a factor it is, but with no search, I don't think the one Kessig Wolf run is the biggest deal. Like, it's good. It seems sweet. And I think Kazul's Fury is nice. It's definitely value added. But I also don't know that you like, this is a little bit different of a style than we're used to, just because this one's actually trying to do all the fling combos. Like you said, this one's like really doing it, you know, with the Recombinator for extra sacrificing and the Phyrexia's cores. I mean, Thronogeth. This one's really trying to do it.
How great is Phyrexia's core? How great is it to have a deck that can use Phyrexia's core?
Phyrexia's core is underrated. That's good.
Very solid. So, I mean, this is a kind of a cool deck. I think it's one of those things that kind of simmers and simmers until it bubbles over, but it's not... I guess it could still be pretty blisteringly fast, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think you know, if you draw Hardened Scales, all bets are off, because there's a lot of stuff that gets into like some double, you know, like stuff gets pretty big in a hurry if you have a Hardened Scales and an Arcbound Ravager and you got some modular stuff going on. Sometimes numbers get really big really fast.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to say with this, with regards to the Emrakul deck, this is a deck that can realistically get hit by an Emrakul, this is a deck that can get into situations where it's like, okay, if you attack with an Emrakul, you're dead on board. Because, like, you just end up sacking some of your modular stuff, and then you move it all onto one big creature, and then you're fine. You know, sacrifice some land.
Speaking of that Emrakul deck, how do you feel about Omen of the Sea in this deck? I don't like it at all. And I like Omen of the Sea, but I don't like it at all in this deck.
You gotta sacrifice something to your opponent's Emrakuls. No, dude, I don't know. I like Omen of the Sea too, but it seems out of place here. It's not just that I don't like it with Snapcaster, and I know that that's why you don't like it. And you probably also don't like it because it's not like it's actually that good, right?
Well, okay, here's my thoughts on Omen of the Sea. A, of course I don't like it with Snapcaster, but B, explain to me why it's better than Opt.
I don't think it is.
I'd rather have the one-mana version. Well,
I mean, it scries too.
Great. right? It costs twice as much. It's not like it drew twice as many cards. It just scryed twice as much. You know, and
maybe the way the games play out, you just sit there with mana open and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get my extra scry on because I just really need to find the combo.
I mean, if that's the case, I almost would just rather have more modular double-faced cards then. Like, there's a Valakut Awakening in this deck, for example, right? Like, the Sexus tops up on 22 lands, not counting the Valakut Awakening. But, like, I'd rather just... If you were going to play that game, all right, then let's play a real game where we're going to play land. You know,
I actually would. I'll do you one better. I think if you're actually going to do that, like if you actually are just in the market to sacrifice Omen of the Sea for the full 5, is Temple of Epiphany not like in the equation?
I would rather have Temple of Epiphany to start with, right? I just would rather have it, and I don't particularly want to play come into play tap land, but. I just don't think Omen of the Sea is very good.
You were just talking about the double-faced cards. You were just talking about the double-faced cards.
Yeah, but that's a spell too sometimes. You know.
Well, so is Temple of Epiphany. It just is an opt.
It's like, I guess it's like 66% of an opt or something. Like when your opt is just getting a land anyway, Temple of Epiphany.
But yeah, no, this is like a Splinter Twin deck. It's all the way down to like having the sideboard Blood Moon plan, you know?
I like this deck. I thought it was... I mean, it's so... Like, it's just cool. Or just like, oh, Brazen Borrower, that makes sense to me. Snapcaster Mage, that makes sense to me. 15 you.
Spoiler. When you look at the creatures and there's only 9, and they're just among 3 creatures, it's not hard to see the Emrakul. And every deck that Emrakul's in, that's like a real big part of the context. Snapcaster Mage just kind of hangs out places. Brazen Borrower, Vendilion Click, they just kind of hang out. They're who knows? They're wherever. Emrakul is like Emrakul owns every establishment that she's in.
I mean, not for nothing. Emrakul also flies, right? Like, when that's annihilating you, like, your good scenario is, like, 7 permanents, right? Because one of them got in Emrakul's way, right? That's the way I look at it. Your bad scenario is every other scenario.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it's right to play Omen of the Sea. I might be underestimating it.
Okay.
But
if you're addicted to 2-mana spells... How about just more Izzet Charms?
I don't know. I don't think I love Izzet Charm right now either.
I don't love Izzet Charm. I'm not in love with
Izzet Charm. I would. I know. At the end of the day, I think it's opt is the card to beat.
Yeah, I
agree. Yeah. So
wait, how do you feel about a Braid? Is a Braid better than Shredded Sails in the main deck?
Oh, that's a good question. I like a Braid.
So I think a Braid is a good card. I'm just saying.
No, I like a Braid better than Shredded Sails. I like a Braid. I like a Braid in the format. I think it's underrated. Okay. I like it as a main deck card. Don't get me wrong. I do think it's interesting to consider. I think Shredded Sails has a lot of purpose, a lot of places. But I actually like a Braid right now. Yeah. I like. Sometimes you just want to kill somebody's like Stoneforge Mystic before it can activate.
I always like when a Braid was in Standard, I always wanted to play like lots of Abraids, like 3 or 4 Braids main deck. But now that Abraid's in other formats like Pioneer or here in Modern, like I never want to play a Braid in any deck. Like I just like when people are playing a Braid as a sideboard card, all the time I'm just like, if you really want to kill an artifact, why not just pick one of the more specialized artifact killing cards rather than a Braid? And then, sometimes you're like, sometimes I want to kill a creature, sometimes I want to kill an artifact. Why don't you just play Bone Crusher Giant? Like, I feel like Bone Crusher Giant, if I just want to play one, I just so much rather have a Bone Crusher Giant than in a Braid.
I don't know, because you can Snapcaster Mage the Braid.
Yeah, the Bone Crusher Giant's already a Snapcaster Mage, except for twice.
This is not a deck that's just trying to value people out. The reason that there's Brazen Borrower and Snapcaster Mage is part of that finish you off with Lightning Bolt. When you have a Bone Crusher Giant, I mean, it could be fine. But, like, there's a lot of 3 toughness things that are really important. And when you have when you're paying for the Bone Crusher Giant, it's a little bit overkill sometimes. But I
Yeah.
like the card. I just think that I don't think it's crazy to play a Braid.
Yeah, I
don't
don't
know.
think it's crazy either. I mean, we're talking about a one of out of 75 cards right now.
Totally.
I think I can imagine myself playing this deck. I can just imagine myself like casting ops that aren't in this deck. Tempoing somebody with a Brazen Borrower or a Snapcaster Mage.
There's a lot of ways you can build it. Yeah.
Kind of juking them into tapping mana on their own turn. Because I'm playing like I'm just playing like a blue-red control deck, and then boom, headshot through the breach. I already did my 5. Like, I don't even need the Lightning Bolt finish because my Borrower and my Snapcaster Mage already rumbled. That's why their mana's tapped.
I love it.
I like this deck a lot. It's good.
So I wanted to ask you about the evolution of that Oops All Spells deck we talked about.
Oh, yeah. Like Guy by 297's deck.
Yeah, Guy by 297 packing quite an evolved version of Oops All Spells.
This is spicy. It's only 60 cards.
So first of all, only 60 cards. The discipline. Now, how can you get away with only 60 cards? Like, I thought part of the whole thing was you're like, oh, I need a critical mass of stuff. Great question. So here are a few things that you have that are different in this build. First of all, there's 3 copies of Sword of the Meek. Why are there 3 copies of Sword of the Meek? What's going on? Why would you play Sword of the Meek? Right?
Might you get a 1/1 creature into play?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of the hope is that you have a Narcomoeba, for instance.
Yeah.
Because the Narcomoeba trigger so when you flip your deck, even if Narcomoeba is the top card of your deck, it doesn't actually do its whole thing until you flipped your whole deck. So you flip your whole deck, you get your 2 Narcomoebas, and this deck actually has 2 because you want to make sure you have a backup if you can, because you want to make sure that, like, even if you draw one, you want to still have one in your deck. So you get one of your 2 Narcomoebas. The Sword of the Meeks all hop out of the graveyard. You get 3 of them. Why 3 instead of 4? Well, you only need 3 because you're going to sack the 3 of them to Salvage Titan. Salvage Titan is the 4/black 6/4 golem that you can sacrifice 3 artifacts instead of paying its cost. And you can exile 3 artifact cards from your graveyard to return this card to your hand. The other artifacts, because remember, with all these Sword of the Meeks, okay, like I'll give you an example. You can like re-trigger the Sword of the Meeks, obviously the second time, and then get back. You can both get back and play the Salvage Titan. But the thing is, you don't need to actually. You can actually just start by some of those Pentad Prisms and Talisman of Resiliences. You just exile 3 of them from your graveyard that you flipped from when you flip your deck, and you have the Titan in your hand. And then you sacrifice the 3 Sword of the Meeks, and you get the Titan in play. The other one, you can get Phantasmagorium back into your hand.
Well, I mean, but isn't that game when you cast the Salvage Titan? Because you flipped 4 Vengevines and you flipped 4 Creeping Chill already, right? So
yeah, presumably that's plan A.
Yeah.
Like 4 Vengevine is another 16, and that's 28, right? So that like even if they have 2 blockers, they're dead.
Yeah, and like you can't even like it's very difficult to stop this sequence, right? Like if you cast the Undercity Form or whatever and it goes off, right? Like that's a cast creature. Whether or not the Phantasmagorian resolves, I'm sorry, the Salvage Titan resolves is irrelevant to the Vengevines, right? The Vengevines are like, job done. Let's rumble, right?
Yeah. Assuming you have the Vengevines, that's the main thing you got going on. So, but there's purpose to the Phantasmagorian too, though. It's like a second avenue. Like if you have Phantasmagorian, okay. So what happens if you just have some pieces of your combo in the wrong place? When you flip your deck, Phantasmagorian lets you just discard whatever cards you want from your hand.
Oh, to put them in the place you need them.
Right. Because you need the Vengevines in your graveyard, not your hand.
Yeah.
And you need the Sword of the Meeks in the graveyard. So having one Phantasmagorian lets you just mind twist yourself.
That's so hot. Isn't it weird how Magic like allows you to play all these radically different things? Like the first thing you learn as a competitive Magic player is that card advantage is good. Like that's like the first baby step you take from, all right, this is a little bit more structured than just, play whatever cards I want to play in whatever numbers I want to play them. But that now we're evolved to this point where it's like card advantage can be looked at many different ways.
What do you think of Pentad Prism, man? I think Pentad Prism looks so hot.
Oh, I really like it. I also like Talisman of Resilience. One of the reasons I like these cards is you could just cast one on turn 2 and then just rumble with the Vengevine that you drew. And, make them deal with it. Like, Vengevine is still, a 4/3 haste.
Okay, dude. I love where your heart's at. But, dude,
you make them deal with it. And then, when they deal with it, headshot.
Dude, this is a deck that's trying to win on turn 3. And you know how, a lot of people were playing the 1/1 double face card Elf? The thing is, this deck is, instead of trying to play quite so many tapped, you don't have to play so many of the ones that are stuck tapped when you have only 60 cards. And instead of something super vulnerable like that, Pentad Prism and Talisman of Resilience are a lot more durable of acceleration.
Yeah.
And a key, this deck has 4 Turn Timber Symbiosis, 4 Seagate Restoration, 4 Amaria's Call, 4 Agadeem's Awakening. This deck's serious about and 4 Simian Spirit Guide, mind you.
I think the Simian Spirit Guide is the thing about this deck. You can deploy the Pentad Prism or the Talisman of Resilience a turn early.
Dude, you realize you just win turn 2, right? You go turn 1 Simian Spirit Guide, Pentad Prism, because you play a double face card, and then next
rock
turn,
and roll on turn 2, yeah.
Right, you just have 4, and then you just play either one. This deck is definitely busted.
Do you know what's crazy about this deck? If you're all right, fine, but this deck absolutely folds to Rest in Peace, right? Except for it sideboards into Goblin Charbelcher.
Mm-hmm.
Literal Goblin Charbelcher.
Right, and then there's one mountain, so you can do your thing,
I think this is so cool,
dude. How about what is it like when you just look at a deck and you're like, oh, I guess we're just at the spot where this deck that wins on turn 2 is playing with Thoughtseize, Palaka Predation, Pact of Negation. Another piece of technology, instead of playing the World Spineworm, one Nexus of Fate as your I'm not going to run out of cards card.
Yeah, what if do you ever cast that, do you think?
Yeah, dude, you got 4 Pentad Prisms in your deck, man.
You could just get to the point where you're just casting Nexus of Fate over and over again. This is
what you do with the Venge. If you're going to Vengevine for value, it's because you're going to hit him with Nexus of Fate,
Oh, man. I don't know, Patrick. I think I might be a convert.
Well, right? Here's the thing.
I think I might hang up my 2/2 hastes for 4/3 hastes. This thing has a lot going on.
Have you walked through just how unreal Nexus of Fate is in this deck? If you can get to it without needing to rely on Pentad Prism or Simian Spirit Guide, if you can actually just get enough Agadeem's Awakening, Amaria's Call, Seagate Restoration, Turn Timber Symbiosis, Hagra Mauling, Talisman Resilience, it's not out of the question. So if you can combo off, and then you have Nexus of Fate, you take infinite turns.
Oh, man. I think
then you can just win with your Narcomoeba.
With one Narcomoeba has got to be the best way. I mean, that's just the best way to win.
And then dude, even you know how the other decks had to play 2 World Spineworms in case you draw one?
Yeah.
Phantasmagorian. You can still Phantasmagorian the Nexus of Fate. And then it gets shuffled back, and you're in business.
This totally reminds me of, I was playing in a Star City Invitational a few years ago, and Patrick Sullivan was doing coverage, and he came by and he took a picture that's immortalized on the interwebs, and I think I was attacking with a Narcomoeba wearing a Shuko. Right? He's just doing work. I can't tell you enough how much I love the concept of fair reanimation attacking. It's just the best because your opponent is so demoralized if they're going to lose to like your horrible 1/1 flyer.
I believe you, but man, is this deck not something I would describe as fair. And no, I know if you have
love the
reanimate Narcomoeba part. Yeah.
But it's the fair attack part that puts it over the top.
You're looking forward to when you go Agadim's Awakening. I'll get back my Narcomoeba and my Simian Spirit Guide and my Vengevine. Let's go.
I mean, you had me at Narcomoeba. You didn't even have to finish the sentence, man. I mean, what I'm really looking forward to is
Sword of the Meek. Just get the Sword of the Meek in there for value.
Oh yeah, that's like my Shuko.
Dude, if you put Sword of the Meek on your Simian Spirit Guide, it gets out of bolt range.
This sounds fantastic. No, but then the infinite turn. The thing is, how many of the infinite turns do you have to take before your opponent just like realizes that this is Doom itself? Right? Because like the first time you do it, they might not realize, but by the third time, they're like, "Oh, wait a second, you're just going to do that every turn."
The operations aren't very complicated. You flip your whole deck, and then the one card in your graveyard that's Nexus of Fate is now your deck.
Yeah. So
now your deck is just Nexus of Fate. If you've got 7 mana and you Nexus of Fate, you put it back. I don't think that one's like got that many steps that it's going to be so tough to. The deck was already unreal before. This is like 7 huge pieces of advance. This is getting into some like crazy. Like when you look at this deck, doesn't it start to remind you of like it's getting into that Flash space where it's like, you just have 1 Pact of Negation, 1 Nexus of Fate, 1 Salvage Titan, 1 Phantasmagorian. Why 2 Narcomoebas? It's the perfect number.
This is
why 3 Sword of the Meeks? Yeah,
highly reminiscent to me of like my all-time favorite Legacy deck. Right? Like, I mean, I think this is like a triumph of deck design. I thought the deck was super novel at 80 cards. I guess it's better at 77 cards because that seems to where people have moved to. But at 60 cards,
nice,
chef's kiss. I think like after sideboarding, when you're a Goblin Charbelcher deck, I'm like, this is crazy good. This is like when you figure out how to beat somebody who, I guess in all cases where you can combo somebody off, like you know, like Laboratory Maniac to win instead of a reanimation thing to win, like one of those things. This is just like that, but you know, central to the combo instead of at the end of the combo.
The Dogfish actually had something kind of interesting. So this is just a mono blue Merfolk deck, but 4 Glasspool Mimics gives you it's like another Lord. Like it's like a Regery, right? Copy the Regery.
I think that the value of the Glasspool Mimic is largely in its other side, though, right?
It's the fact that it's both. Now. Right, now you get to play with 18 land in your Merfolk deck. That's so good. Plus, this is a deck with 4 Waterlogged Grove and 3 Mutavault. So, like, you are not suffering through a lot of dead draws, you know?
No. I mean, this is the kind of deck I never want to play against. Like, basically every creature is a Lord, right? So, like, a Lord or a cantrip, right? Because you've got Silvergill Adept. And so a lot of your stuff is free because of Aether Vial. And the biggest thing about this deck to me, which is weird why the Dogfish played only 3 copies, is Spreading Seas.
I would say Spreading Seas. Oh my god. You love Spreading Seas.
I love Spreading Seas.
I know you do.
Remember I tried to convince you that Spreading Seas was better than Jace the Mind Sculptor?
Yeah.
How successful was I on that trying to convince you?
I mean, it wasn't.
Well, it's been 10 years.
What do you think of the new Death Shadow evolutions? Like, at this point, people are just playing the full package of 4 Scourge of the Skyclaves and 4 Death Shadow. But more kind of interestingly, Brushfire Elemental continuing to really put in some work. You know, like in a fetch land format, Brushfire Elemental hits like a truck.
Oh yeah, that's actually where my eyes went on like Alkander's 5/0 deck, for example. First of all, you called it on Scourge of the Skyclaves, like, you know, first week of the set. I think Brushfire Elemental might even be low here at 2, right? So it's so explosive. I think that if you have
it's hard. You can't play that many 5-drops or 3-drops, right? Like, it's effectively a 3-drop. I guess it's your only one because you are a Luris deck.
I mean, but you're also like a Ren and 6 deck.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, like, one of the things I think it does for you is, obviously, it kind of can potentially, it doesn't start the party, right? But it kind of rolls the party along a little bit. It's got haste, and it's only 2. But you're a deck that's got, like, Monastery Swift Spear and Brushfire Elemental, Tarmogoyf, Ren and 6. Like, you're a legitimate offensive deck, even if you're not on the Scourge of the Skyclaves, Death Shadow part of your deck. Like, that's, I think, it's, like, pretty important, right? If you're just like Swift Spear, Seal of Fire, Fatal pushing things out of the way, like, people have to respect that aspect of your deck. And I think that one of the potential pitfalls that certain versions of Death Shadow in the past had, like, certainly the Jund version is less susceptible to this, but like the Grixis versions, for example, they were pretty dedicated to blowing themselves up, right? This deck can just play a real game of Magic and not have to go to the Death Shadow route and deal a ton of damage.
Right. It's not really it's like, this isn't like, like, there's no dismember action and there's no pain. Like, there's just the usual fetch lands and shock lands. There's a little bit of the those nurturing peat land type things, but it's not like your mana base is like all in on it either. You can just play normal.
Yeah, like, I think that you could just, it's just like a Jund Death Shadow deck. Like, that's how this would be described, like, in the strictest sense, right? But I feel like it's a Jund Death Shadow deck more than a Jund Death Shadow deck, if that makes any sense, right? Like, you could just be like a Ren and 6 Tarmogoyf, let's play around with Thoughtseizes and Inquisitions and, push your thing. And then when they get low enough, you just have this bonus ability of hitting somebody with Temur Battle Rage after you've looked at their hand.
Yeah. I figured you might like this one. I mean, it's obviously not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but it's more different than meets the eye, just because of how fair it's playing,
Well, I think that's,
if it needs to.
That's part of it. It doesn't have to play fair. It can play like an explosive Death Shadow game, but it can also play like this, like just a Jund game, like Ren and 6, Luris of the Dream Den, like regular permanents. If you're just like Seal of Fire, Seal of Primordium after sideboarding, Luris of the Dream Den, if you're playing one of these matchups where people are relatively removal poor, like, there's I think Spirit Stack or some new iteration of Death and Taxes in one of the other tournaments that I thought was worth talking about. Like, those decks aren't good at killing utility creatures, right? Like, they're good at tempo. They're good at like combat sometimes, but they're not good at somebody who's just moving like high utility permanents from one zone to another for 0 mana. Like, that's a completely different kind of game plan than we see from like mono offense or combo decks.
There's over in the league, the most recent league, there's a Monotron. It's just a colorless Tron deck, but it's a thing of beauty. It's built around a little different of an engine than most Tron decks. Now, it's hard to describe any Tron deck as being a thing of beauty, but that said, this one has 4 Everflowing Chalice and 4 Astral Cornucopia. Why 4 Everflowing Chalice and 4 Astral Cornucopia? Well, both of them are artifacts that are ways to get mana, like some kind of a Power Stone type thing, a Mind Stone, where you can get a mana out of each turn, but it has, importantly, a charge counter on it that's driving how much mana. This is important because the other part of this deck's engine is 4 Surge Node and 4 Core Tapper. If you have Core Tapper or Surge Node, your Everflowing Chalice goes berserk. Well, like, you can actually go ahead.
I mean, I think one of the big parts of this is, like, can't you play those permanents like Everflowing Chalice or Astral Cornucopia for very little mana, like 0 mana, and then add a bunch of counters to them with Core Tapper?
Yeah.
Like,
so you can go turn 1 Everflowing Chalice or Astral Cornucopia and Surge Node, activate it, and now you immediately have you can't activate on turn 1 with that one specifically, but turn 2 you can either just instantly sack your Core Tapper, and then now your Chalice is up to 3 or is up to 2, or with Surge Node you can just play it, use it immediately, and now your Chalice is charged up. And Surge Node has so many counters. It's like you're basically getting Thawing Glacier every single turn, but like at a discount. And so you just end up ramping really fast, and you're going up to the usual like Ugin, Karn type stuff, which is notable that you're not going the highest. I mean, there's one Ulamog to give you a top, but like you're not trying to go all the way. You're just trying to pretty quickly be at 8, you know?
Yeah, like this deck plays like a really good mid game, I think. Like you've got,
particularly when you have Mystic Forge.
Yeah, you've got these key permanents between Ugin, Karn, and Mystic Forge that are not that expensive, but like they're pretty easy to get into play with the mana acceleration in a deck like this. And then once you've got that going, you just, I hate to say play a fair game of Magic, because you're probably taking like 6 actions per turn or something. You don't have to go, I mean, you've got like Emrakul on the sideboard, you've got Ulamog in the main deck in terms of big things, but you're just taking a ton of actions and gaining a ton of value. You can Maze Mind Tome people, you can map for whatever nonsense you want to get, like an Adventurer's Fair or, you know, a Urzatron piece. And, you know, well, I think at some point they submit.
For you, definitely, when you get them under the bridge. But, like, the Expedition map, and even more importantly, Maze Mind Tome, very, very, very key with your Mystic Forge. You know, just giving you more ways to clear the top.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't a deck with that much land in the first place, so if you've been getting some land out of it, you know, there's a good chance you actually just keep going. Plus, sometimes you're just like, oh, well, I guess I'm stuck, but at least it's the missing Tron piece.
It is at least the missing Tron piece. I think this deck is really cool, right? Like, it does a different thing. I mean, it does a different thing than other Tron decks we've seen for years and years. I think this whole Core Tapper, charge counters for mana acceleration engine sort of thing is cool. And you can just, like, make guys with Ugin, right? And that's just basically drawing extra cards. But that's probably not how you're going to win. Like, Karn is just too powerful in this deck.
I mean, Karn is definitely, I don't know, Karn and Ugin are both can just really take over the game right now.
Like, I think just the combo of, like, just cheaping things up with your Planeswalkers and then, like, deploying a colorless source of mana acceleration is pretty good in and of itself. And then all of a sudden, Core Tapper can just put 3 counters on something at will. That's the...
So walk me through what is going on with Quiet's 5-0 list. This 5-0 list is a Tron deck, but it's a Tron deck that reminds me of like the Tezzerator. But like, so it's a Tron deck with no Karns and no Eldrazi. It just has one Ugin the Spirit Dragon. And then its other creatures are 1 Wormcoil Engine, 1 Sundering Titan, and then 2 Walking Ballistas, a Snapcaster Mage, and 2 Nimble Obstructionists. Nimble Obstructionist, that's an interesting one out of a Tron deck, right?
It's like a counter spell, right?
And then there's 2, well, in a cantrip, destroy your fetch land. But then Shark Typhoon as an additional, and Mindslaver. That's a throwback joint.
Yeah, it's Academy Ruins, though.
Dude, Fabricate to go find your Sundering Titan?
So this is like a surprisingly straightforward deck, I think. Right? So
this is straightforward?
Yeah, this is Tron from when Tron was in Standard. Right? Like,
okay, why is there 1 Cyclonic Rift, 1 Dismember, 1 Spatial Contortion, 1 Snapcaster Mage?
Well, first of all, there's 1 Snapcaster Mage because there ain't that many spells, right? Like,
why is there
15 instants. That's for Val. Why are there 2 Nimble Obstructionists? Like,
well, that's what I'm asking.
All right.
Where do these numbers come from?
This is a deck it's got a degenerate mana engine that might take a little while to assemble, but you got help assembling it because you've got cards like Condescend that keep you alive while kind of digging for things, right?
You have Repeal, Condescend. This is like a who's who of, I guess that was a pretty good
That's
standard
a
card.
right?
I guess,
this is
sure.
literally just like a standard Tron deck from 2009. Right?
Guess.
Or not even 2009, from like 2005. Right? Like, it's got Ugin the Spirit Dragon. That's its big update. Like, I was going to say instead of Sundering Titan, but it's got Sundering Titan. This is like the kind of deck that an Antonino De Rosa or John Sani played at U.S. Nationals. Right? It's just like, when people say, like, you put the pedal to the metal? This is just like...
I do.
54 miles an hour on the highway. Like, you're pretty close to the speed limit. Like, that's what it is. Solid 54 miles an hour. But you know what? 54 miles an hour is faster than some cars go. And in those cases, you're ahead.
I do think that the effect of Tron is really spreading. I mean, we're seeing a lot more Blood Moons, Magus of the Moon. A lot of people splashing for Cleansing Wildfire. Like blue-white control decks, splashing Cleansing Wildfire on Lightning Bolt. Green-white ramp decks, splashing Cleansing Fire only.
Yeah,
Wildfire
is a nice spell, man.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's pretty strong in this context, right?
Yeah.
But I guess I'm wondering, I don't know, maybe I just have a bias. Formats that get taken over by Tron, it's always like,
okay, here's one. I think it's over in the prelim from, I want to say, November 11th.
Yep.
And there's a deck. It was played by Kiko, a 4-1 record from Kiko.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say this, and I hate to say this with a capital H. This might be my favorite deck of the week, right? So it's a blue-white beatdown deck, right? So 4 Aether Vial, 1 Maul of the Skyclaves, but it's got like Stoneforge Mystic Spell Queller, so you know that Kiko is in it for fun, right? Because this is a fun deck to play against with its 4 copies of Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. But here's the thing. It's splashing blue. It gets to Fairy Time Raveler, so okay, there's a powerful card to put in my blue-white beatdown deck. 4 copies of Confounding Conundrum. So if you're talking about Tron potentially taking over the format, what do you think about I don't even know, trifecta of Leonin Arbiter, Confounding Conundrum, 4 copies of Field of Ruin, 4 copies of Ghost Quarter. Go.
Dude, somebody's on a mission.
I mean, this is like ruin your day.
Dude, it's not like Thalia is hurting the cause, right?
Oh, no. This is like Kiko wants a game of Magic where one person gets to play. Like, they might not play very powerful cards, but...
You're literally, if you're playing as a Tron person, you're going to have spots where you just, like, play Skyclave Apparition, and you just exile their map. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be spots where they just have stuff that you can just hit.
Yeah, I mean, like...
Or, but...
The real question is, because there are other green-white or mono-white versions of, like, similar decks, is Confounding Conundrum a good enough card to splash a second color?
It's for Spell Queller. Don't even front.
All right. But once you've got Spell Queller... I think
that is wild.
This deck is... seriously? Leonin
No, but
Arbiter?
Here's the thing.
Conundrum Ghost Quarter?
Yeah, so here's why I like Confounding Conundrum in this deck, just to be clear. Because I really do like it here. I think you should play 4. When you're playing a Leonin Arbiter deck, and you're doing the whole 4 Field of Ruin, 4 Ghost Quarter, Confounding Conundrum is both highly synergistic with your own deck. You know, like, you get to Confounding Conundrum the other person with your Field of Ruins and Ghost Quarters. It's not like you have to have them be a ramp deck, right?
No.
But even if you don't have the Field of Ruin Ghost Quarter action going on, you just mess them up with their fetch lands.
Yeah, like, you don't need a lot of patience. You just need to know the basic play pattern. Like, once you know it, like if your opponent doesn't know it, I mean, they're going to figure it out pretty quick, right? Like, this is just like, it's weird. Like, these permanents sort of semi-time walk the opponent all the time if they're playing fetch lands. And then they also slow them down over time because of how Leonard Arbiter works in general. And then, like, if they ever just try to take actions, you're just going to mess them up with these cards that are supposed to be sort of like fair Wasteland or fair Dust Bowl, but they're like not fair if you're playing with Confounding Conundrum and Leonin Arbiter. They're like awful.
So here's a few more things to spice things up. First of all, the Flicker Wisp aspect of this deck. You can Flicker Wisp lots of stuff, but I know you're going to enjoy Flicker Wisp being your Confounding
Well, I mean,
get that extra card, right? Second
obviously.
of all, Watcher for Tomorrow is just like a really powerful card. That card would have been that card would have been great in Standard.
Wait, so talk to me about Watcher for Tomorrow. I looked at this card and I'm like, this is like a Merfolk Branchwalker. Is that a terrible take?
I think so. So with Watcher for Tomorrow, you get to like dig 4 deep, right? So you're impulsing. Impulse is like pretty freaking great.
When it's attached to a free 2/1?
A 2/1, right? So you get your Silvergill Adept type of action, because one of two things is true. Either they can remove it or they can't. And if they don't remove it, we'll get to that in a second. If they remove it, obviously you get paid. But it's not like they can just not try to remove it, because somebody needs to wear the Sword of Fire and Ice, right? Or the Maul.
Yeah.
But second of all, you can blink your Watcher. It triggers from leaving the battlefield, not dying.
Oh.
So you can blink it, and then you get best of both worlds. You get it coming and going.
Oh, you can Teferi it.
And then here's the part that is just tippity top. Dude, this deck is 80 cards.
Why would you play
You can
80
blink,
cards?
confound. You can Yorion your Confounding Conundrum. You can Yorion your Watcher for Tomorrow, your Glasspool Mimic, your Flicker Wisp, your Teferi, your Stoneforge. This deck is like a really good Yorion deck.
Yeah.
You're not impressed?
I told you I think this is my favorite deck of the week.
Okay, maybe we can go one step further. Glasspool Mimic as part of your lands? Like, that's always good, right?
Yeah.
Here's what I'm wondering, man. We're so close. So, 3 Spell Queller, 4 Apparition, 4 Glasspool Mimic, that's 11. 4 Flicker Wisp is 15. Maul, Batterskull Sword. So there's 18 cards in this deck. Oh, Teferi's. So maybe we're not that close. 21. I was like, man, so there's 2 Lures to the Dream Den to sideboard in for attrition-y matchups. But I was like, man, I wonder. It sounds pretty horrible to just
Can you just
cut
make it
all of your
deck?
Equipment and keep Stoneforge Mystic.
No, that's not good.
But no, I do like boarding in the Lurrus,
Yeah, that's good.
Plus, Lurrus is actually a deceptively good blank for Yorion. Because you can, play Lurrus. You have your Lurrus, and you just get whatever you were going to get from your Lurrus, and that triggers, and then you Yorion your Lurrus in the thing, and then you get the things trigger again, and you get to Lurrus, and you get something else back, and you're just like, yeah, I'm just going. But when you have Yorion in play with this deck is a Flicker Wisp deck. If you Yorion Flicker Wisp, and I guess you don't get to double dip on the Lurrus the way I was just describing, because you do got to wait till your end step. But if you're Yorioning and Flicker Wisping, that's just your life now. If you ever get that going, you're like, this turn I'm blinking my Flicker Wisp, and then it comes back and you have the Yorion, and then you're like, let me blink I don't know. That's like a pretty powerful inevitability,
All
right?
So I would put it like this. You know how in Standard they say nobody survives a Yorion blink?
No, they don't say that.
They say that. I mean, I don't. It's not true, but people say that, right?
I guess we roll in different circles. Okay, keep going.
So, I mean, this deck has way better things to blink than the Standard decks do in general. I actually think it's weird. Like, you're talking about an 80-card Yorion deck. 3 Spell Queller? Isn't that like the second most powerful card in this deck?
No. This deck has Stoneforge Mystic and Teferi Time Raveler.
Okay. Is it in the top 5?
Yeah. And so Aether Vial is better. That's 3.
Okay, Aether Vial.
Path Exile is better.
Actually,
that's 4.
I'm not clear on who's number 1. Is Aether Vial number 1? That card's very powerful.
Nah, I think Stoneforge Mystic and Teferi are both better than Aether Vial, personally.
All right, those are 3 pretty good cards, though.
Yeah, but whatever. I know what you mean. It's like a good card. The answer is no. I don't know. I don't mind playing 4, but I wouldn't mind going to 3. Depends on what you're expecting to face. I don't know. You only have room for so many cards.
Yeah,
80's not 100.
When I lose to decks that play Spell Queller, and I've lost to Spell Queller decks a lot since they built Spell Queller. I mean, I feel like I'm usually losing games where they play multiple Spell Quellers, right? Like, that's the thing.
No, I don't know. No, that seems excessive.
No, I don't need more than 1.
No, I'm not saying you don't need it. I'm just saying that the usual case can't possibly be multiples. Statistically, it's got to just be like the normal case is 1, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're stretching that far.
I think maybe I'm just so scarred from the games where they played
is probably true.
A Rattle Chains into a Spell Queller, and then I was going to stabilize, and they had another Spell Queller, because that's a life scarring event.
Dude, what do you think of just turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, go get the Maul, turn 3, put the Maul on the Stoneforge Mystic, and now you just have a 3/4 flying first striker.
Like, that's a plan.
That's the kind of clock I know you get into. Right? Like,
one of the reasons I like this deck is because it has a very legitimate beatdown plan, and it has a broken Aether Vial plan, and it's a combo deck with Yorion / Teferi / Flicker Wisp, and it's a crazy mana destruction deck with Confounding Conundrum, Field of Ruin, Ghost Quarter, and Leonin Arbiter. Like,
you can fit a lot of themes when you're 80 cards, but yeah.
But, like, it's good at all of them. You know,
I agree. And it pains me. It pains me to say this, but I think you're right. The other deck might be the most broken deck of the week and is going to get banned. This is the deck of the week. This deck is, in terms of just taking some stuff and themes where if I didn't see the list, I would not have bet on this deck looking so good. I think you've sold me. This is... It's an impressive collection. It looks like it might be good, but in terms of just like, this is taking a bunch of oddballs. I mean, there's some really good players on this team too, but like,
yeah, like high caliber cards. That's the other thing. Like Stoneforge Mystic and Teferi are aces.
But like, is this deck really beating the graveyard deck?
I mean, I think it could if it wanted to. It just, for some reason, doesn't have any of the sideboard cards you would want to.
No, it's 5. It's 3 Remorseful Clerics and 2 Relics.
I mean, Relic is not powerful enough to beat the graveyard deck, right? Like, I think you need something like a Rest in Peace, like so that you don't have to leave mana open. Because like, how impressive is the Relic on turn 1 if they just go off on turn 2?
Not very.
So, okay, Thalia is pretty good, just insofar that it could potentially slow them down, but not even that good because a big part of their combo is just playing a creature, right? So if Thalia doesn't come down faster than the Accelerator, it doesn't even help you that much. It does help you kind of against the Charbelcher plan. Kind of.
What deck? How is that other deck not just completely busted in half?
The other deck is busted in half. I think it's comical that deck exists because it's so well built also, right? Like, yeah. All those individual card choices, like, when I looked at the other deck and I'm like, hold on a second, this deck contains the Creeping Chill combo, but it just adds a lethal Vengevine combo. This is dumb, right? Like, this is like, and it's like, and the other things are like the Narcomoeba sword combo, the Titan part of it, like the single Titan, single Nexus, single, like, all those elements of the deck are like super reminiscent. I mean, not reminiscent's the wrong word. They're just hallmarks of a very, very well-tuned deck. Like, I think it's comical that deck exists. That's my assessment.
Okay, so now we've been talking in the past about Jace the Mind Sculptor, Teferi, or basically Omnath decks, right?
Yeah.
What were the Omnath decks missing? In Violent Outburst, didn't quite break the format yet, but what do you think of the missing link being 3 Time Warps? You know, your next Jace, Teferi, other Teferi, Renin 6, Omnath, Uro, Cryptic Command, Lightning Bolt, Growth Spiral, Path Exile. Like, your card quality cannot be touched. Cannot be touched.
You gotta take it down a few notches.
The worst card in this deck is Mana Leak, aside from possibly Time Warp. But, man, how sick is Time Warp in this deck? If you get Time Warp Uro going, or Time Warp Omnath,
I mean, Time Warp Uro is, I mean, that's excessive, man.
Time Warp anything is excessive, but man, that's a great payoff for Omnath.
Oh. God, Omnath is so dumb.
Yeah, but the other deck is broken in half, right?
It's weird, like, it's so weird coming off of Standard where, like, that Omnath Uro, like, ramp all aces deck was clearly so overpowered. But then now transporting it to a format like Modern where you're trying to do the same thing, and it's maybe the 4th best thing you could be.
I don't think so. I think it's the 2nd best, personally.
Really? You think it's better than the Artifact Engine?
I think so.
I think the Artifact Engine's really impressive. I think
the Artifact Engine is very impressive. I just think that people are going to start upping the amount of hate they have.
So, kind of, maybe I'm underrating the Omnath deck, but I just feel like the White Weenie Conundrum deck is just so well... I'm imagining, anyway, that it's so well positioned against that deck.
Against that deck. I concede that that's a bad matchup. Probably. But, like, I just don't want to play that White Weenie deck against the Oops All Spells.
Look, I mean, would you be willing to play the White Weenie deck against Oops All Spells if you were willing to, put 8 real sideboard cards? No? Because you're going to lose to the Charbelcher combo anyway. Is that the problem?
Yeah, you're going to lose to the Charbelcher combo anyway.
Yeah.
And you're also just not going to face them enough right now to justify using... You need your sideboard slots if you play a deck like that.
Yeah.
Plus, it's not like that deck's like just got it made versus the Artifact decks.
No, you need to play real Magic with that deck. That's the thing. Like, yeah. I think it's one of those decks that can certainly, it has game, it can compete with like everybody, it has a pretty powerful plan, but it's not like Oops All Spells. It's not like Omnath where if you get your thing that they're just demolished, right? Like, I feel like the Oops All Spells deck, if you get your thing, it might take you a second to win, but like the cards are pretty much played at that point, right? I mean, same with Omnath. Like, it might take you 3 turns to win, but you're so far ahead but the White Weenie deck is not like that. You need to you're inching an advantage for maybe 5 turns.
And the amount of so at this point, the last few days, all the Oops All Spells decks have been playing, have been converging on this exact same list, plus or minus like 1 or 2 cards. It's just too big a part of the field right now. I would not play a deck that loses to it, and I bet most people who think they beat it lose to it.
I mean, that is like a truism of every time Narcomoeba was one of the best cards in a format.
Man, dude, what do you think about Ashiok Dream Render?
I think
that could mess some people up, right?
It is great, except for it costs about 2 mana too much.
2 mana too much? Dude, you just stop everybody's fetch lands.
Yeah, but like if we're talking about how Oops All Spells is the way to go, I mean, Ashiok Dream Render's interaction is not quick.
Yeah. And that's true. But you can mess them up from a random, you just like if they don't sometimes they kill you on turn 2 or 3, right?
That's
but
the
like
problem.
sometimes you're on the play and you just Ashiok them. They have like 10 different cards that they need to be in their deck. If you just Ashiok them and then exile them, it's like, oh, I guess they just don't have Phantasmagorium anymore. Or, oh, I guess they just only have 2 Vengevines or whatever.
Yeah,
there's like a lot of cards you can just take out of their deck.
I agree. If you get that going, it's very, very powerful. Not just against them, right? Against lots of different kinds of strategies. Is that a disruptive card? I'm just saying, deck that disrupts somebody on turn 3 is in one pile. Deck that kills somebody on turn 2 is in another pile. I think that's where that's the axis we're talking about in Modern. No.
Yeah, it saddens me, but yeah. Saddens me to agree with you, man. But when you're right, you're right.
But hey, at least different and cool stuff is happening, and
extremely.
These are such it makes me happy to see decks being built that are different, that are doing exciting things, that are taking advantage of new cards, that are breathing new life into strategies that we've known for years. All that stuff is going on amongst these decks. I have never in my life cheered for a Death and Taxes deck before. I think it's cool that there's this compounding conundrum version of Death and Taxes that's 33% bigger than usual. All
right, can I give you one last deck for the week?
Sure,
dude. 4 Hedron Crabs. So this is Von Siro's 5-0 list in the Modern League. 4 Hedron Crab, 4 Ruin Crab, 2 Ashiok Dream Render main deck, 2 Fraying Sanity, 4 copies of Maddening Cacophony, 4 Archive Trap, 4 Visions of Beyond, 3 Mesmeric Orb, 3 main deck Surgical Extractions. In case you play against Oops All Spells, they're dead for 0 mana.
This is a person who knows what they want in life.
Yeah. This also, while we're on the subject, why don't more people play Surgical Extraction?
I don't know. When you look at it in a deck like this, that is the natural question to ask. You know what's great about this deck?
What's that?
This deck seems insane against straightforward beatdown decks to me. Absolutely insane.
There's only one Crypt Incursion. What are you doing? You think you just race?
Yeah.
You think you can Lava Spike them?
For sure. Those decks are not very good against Mesmeric Orb. Right? Their entire strategy is predicated on tapping all their mana every turn for 4 turns. That's a lot.
Yeah, but this deck's not winning on turn 4.
Not by itself, but if people are helping them and they've got all these crabs and they've got how many times do you need to hit somebody with an Archive Trap with a Mesmeric Orb in play before they don't have any mana producing lands in their deck anymore? That I think is one of the reasons that you just absolutely cripple beatdown decks. Dude,
3 Ravenous Traps in the sideboard also.
That's good. That's good. Dude, Soups All Spells.
That's really good. This is a person who knows what they want in life. You are exactly right.
I think this deck is probably advantaged in a 3-game match against Soups All Spells.
I would be shocked if it's not.
Okay. So that's one part of it. B, I think this deck looks really good against straightforward beatdown decks. Right? That's 2 good feathers.
Maybe. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I could believe it, but I want to see for myself. I kind of suspect you're probably going to have a little bit of trouble and that you really need those Ensnaring Bridges and Dead of Winter and that other Crypt Incursion. I think you're going to be behind game 1.
Yeah, but
here's the card that I'm excited about. If this deck is good against beatdown, it's the Secret Weapon. 2 copies of Profane Memento. That's the 1 colorless artifact. Whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you gain 1 life.
Oh my god.
Isn't this card your dream?
Nightmare?
I didn't say it was a good dream.
How could you ever beat this card? It was first turn Profane Memento.
Don't play with creatures.
What?
Don't play with creatures.
What if they sacrifice the Wooded Foothills on turn 1 and then you cast an Archive Trap with Profane Memento in play? Is that not enough time?
I'm saying there could be no creatures in your deck. Your Lava Spike deck could just be I guess I'm a Lava Spike deck. I only had the 8 creatures in the first place. I just think that Profane Memento could be sweet. You're playing it, somebody's playing like one of those red green decks that's like a little bit more aggressive, or against a white windy deck. Because I do think that I don't think you're going to be quite as fast as you'd like to be, but I think this is a pretty cool take on the archetype.
I think so too. I think this is a great call out. I think in terms of metagaming, if Oops All Spells gains some, I don't see how it couldn't gain considerable momentum in Modern. It seems
right. It already has it. It's like the most played deck. It's like a quarter of the field, 20% of the field.
It's dumb to me how good that deck looks. Right. I think this might be
very warping. I also suspect that Wizards is just like showing one Modern deck a day or whatever. Or League or whatever. I think there might be a selection effect.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we don't see the ones that 7 of the top 8 are Oops All Spells.
Oh.
It's not like they're showing every event. No, they're just showing one a day, right, of stuff. They're not showing everything every time. Sometimes sometimes they're like, oh, I guess it's just we won't show any standard deck today.
I am so naive. I thought they just showed all of them, but now you say it out loud. God. Of course they can't.
No, there's way too many
games.
Way too many, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're probably right.
Yep. But that said, if you want to win, I would play the busted deck for this week.
Or one of the 3 or 4 other really cool decks we talked about, because
that's what I would play in 2 weeks, or maybe 3 after they ban Oops All Spells later this month.
Yeah.
Then I would switch to one of the really cool decks.
What card do you ban? Do you ban Balustrade Spy?
You got to ban one of those two. It's either Undercity Informer or Balustrade Spy. I don't know. One option, you could just ban the Spy because it's maybe they care about you can Pithing Needle the Undercity Informer. I don't know.
Oh.
You ban one of those two, though.
If we're at a point where, I need to be siding in a Needle and I need to be saying the activation on one of your 2, 1-card combo cards, I think we are too far over the edge at that point. But, all right. Anyway, that was Modern. Modern's awesome. Or broken. Or both.
Agreed. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends